Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast of Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who is still in the running for the New Orleans Saints head coaching job. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. They do say I look like Mike McCarthy, so maybe I am getting the coaching job. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they forgot that they needed to hire a coach. I think they're just now getting on it.
Yeah, they're too busy working on the salary cap and restructuring deals that they forgot someone has to be the head coach of the team.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe they're, well, hey, at least that salary doesn't count against the cap. They got that going.
Yeah, I suppose that works for them. Do you think they're trying to see how they could trade back for Sean Payton?
Yeah, that might be. I don't think Sean Payton wants to go back. I think he's okay where he's at.
I wouldn't blame him.
Yeah, more coaches got to do the fake retire, right?
I mean, plenty of them do it, so it's not like it's anything new.
Well, what? Bruce Arians did it, won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. Sean Payton's doing it. Like it's a good move.
Yeah, it definitely it has a strong track record. Typically, if you're a good coach, you're going to have plenty of opportunities elsewhere, even after you retire.
Yeah, I think that might be the move. Kyle, we should have a fun show here. Kind of our first off-season show, but we have some fun topics we're going to go over today. So in this episode, we're first going to do, as the title suggests, we're going to do the head coaching rankings. We're going to go draft style. It's been so long since we had a good draft style segment, Kyle. So we'll get that going. Then we will have Kyle is going to give his top 10 most disappointing teams in 2024. Or of the 2024 season, I should say. And then I will say who could maybe be the next Saquon Barkley. I'm going to give 10 players to 10 potential teams that could be next year's Saquon Barkley of a signing that ends up being playing a big role. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff, Kyle.
Yeah, a lot to get into. Obviously the playoffs take precedent on this show for obvious reason. We kind of put a lot of the off-season talk on the back burner. And this is kind of our catch-up episodes because we're going to do this. And obviously we got three podcasts, dedicated just to the Super Bowl, between pre-picks and all that kind of stuff, and then our post-game stuff. So we have three podcasts dedicated to the Super Bowl. Then we get into full off-season where there's plenty of action by that point.
Yes. So if you missed the last show, we're doing the same schedule as normal, although on Sunday we will be at 9 p.m. Eastern. We will go over our picks for who can win Super Bowl MVP. And then on Wednesday, we will do our full Super Bowl preview. Michael with a super chat saying, who did the Aints hire? Oh, wait, LOL, go Panthers. Say, Michael, you and I can at least take joy in making fun of the Saints.
Yeah. And so you guys are competing for the division title next year. You guys are friends.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We gotta enjoy it. Hopefully Bryce Young doesn't get too good, or maybe I'll annoy Michael enough that he'll leave.
Yeah. I mean, you've already pissed off Panthers fans enough. You never picked them. And then the one time you picked them, they got blown out.
Yeah. Well, yes, that is what happened. Kyle, let's get into the show, why don't we? Head coach rankings. So we have 6 new head coaches. We are going to rank those 6. What do you want? Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? I want you to go first because I want to see. There are 2 clear guys at the top of this list. I want to see which one you're going to go. Are you going to go with the homer pick or not?
I am not. Although I do think the top 2 were clearly the top 2. For me, it's Ben Johnson. I mean, look, this Chicago thing. Just from, I guess, at the end of the day, it's fair because Mike Vrabel is an established coach. He has had success coaching in the NFL. And so I can understand putting him number 1. I absolutely could understand it. And I think there's a lot of justification for that. But that being said, this was the biggest name on the market for several years now. And he's finally taken the head coaching job. You invested a lot in getting Caleb Williams into this building. Wasn't the best first year. There were some flashes of really good stuff, and then there was some not. But you finally pulled the trigger on this move. And honestly, it's a coaching move that came a year too late because they really needed to cut bait last season, it seemed like, and start fresh with new quarterback, new head coach. But you get an opportunity now. You get the best play caller probably in the world in this sport now with your rookie your coming up and coming year 2 quarterback who still has a ton of talent. He's going to try and fix a lot of things. It's going to look a lot different than it did in Detroit without the offensive line, the running game, all that kind of stuff. But he is a very, very good coach, and I expect him to be a great head coach.
Yeah. Michael's the super chat, Jackson. We're always brothers in arms against New Orleans. Yes, I completely agree, Michael. The I'm with you. Ben Johnson was number one on my list. You see, Kieran is in the chat is saying, "Well, wait a second. All he really is the play caller," and I think that is the question, right, with Ben Johnson. And we've seen it happen time and time again, where someone who's a very good coordinator then goes to be a head coach, and it doesn't quite work the same. And there is more that goes on than just being a more to being a head coach than just X's and O's. Obviously, I think the issue is like if you go after an established guy, usually the reason they're available is like because they didn't work out. Every now and then you get a Sean Payton or Bruce Arians, like we talked about, but like usually, like you're getting a Mike McCarthy who's lost their job for reasons. So I think that like the upside of Ben Johnson working out is Kyle Shanahan. It is Andy Reid. It is this like elite level coordinator / head coach that can win you games year after year, and you don't have to worry about him getting poached.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree with it. And yeah, it's like, it may not work out. We've, like you said, we have seen plenty of coordinators, both offensive and defensive, not work out at the highest level. However, I do think we've seen lately with these offensive gurus, stuff like that, that like these guys at least establish something offensively that just boosts a team to a certain level, like even if it's not perfect, like I think you could even reference someone who is considered like a coaching guru, like Mike McDaniel getting hired. And I don't think that hiring's been perfect, or I don't think the situation's quite worked out the way everyone hoped. But that being said, he boosted Miami's offense substantially. And I expect like maybe Chicago's not a perfect situation. Maybe this franchise doesn't win 12 games next season or anything like that. Maybe they don't win a Super Bowl with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, all that, But I expect this offense to be a lot better next season. And I expect Caleb Williams to be a lot better this season, next season. And if not, then we have to ask serious questions about the draft pick, because I strongly believe that he is going to coach a good offense as long as he can.
Right. And the other thing too is like Mike McDaniel didn't call plays too, right? Like a lot of the offensive examples that don't work out are guys who don't call plays. I guess Arthur Smith is someone who didn't work out, but like a lot of times they're the ones who don't call plays. Usually, if you're a young hotshot coach who calls plays, and again, like to be clear, I went back and looked at it. They didn't really add that much the year that he got there. They added Jameson Williams, but he wasn't. Or once he started calling plays, I should say, because he was there from the start, but he got promoted to calling plays in the second year in Dan Campbell era. That's when we saw the offense completely go on an upswing. Like there was a significant jump, and there wasn't really much personnel change other than Jameson Williams, who barely played because he was injured for most of that year. So, I mean, again, who knows how this stuff will work out? On paper, this is a slam dunk hire.
Yeah, it's a slam dunk hire. Like I said, this guy has been craved by NFL teams for going. This is the third offseason, basically, he was wanted as a head coaching option. He waited, he picked this situation, and based on a lot of the reporting, he had a lot of demands for his position. He wanted heavy influence on who the GM would be for his job, all that kind of stuff. And he's going into a situation where he believes he can best build a roster that he views as competitive. I still think it's going to be, there's still a lot of work to be done this offseason for Chicago, but his primary job is to make Caleb Williams the franchise quarterback they expect him to be.
Yeah. Let's go to number 2, Kyle. Well, I'm going to pick your guy, Mike Vrabel. As we said, these are kind of the two. I mean, the thing about, again, I just kind of said the issue with established head coaches is that they've lost the job usually, and that's the case with Vrabel. Usually there's an issue there, but like it kind of didn't really make sense for him to lose the job with the Titans, and it seems like all he did was make a worse team better. And so it feels like, again, another slam dunk hire for the New England Patriots. Now, again, will sometimes come down to how you get the coordinators. That matters for sure. But like, you just have to assume you're going to get some good stuff here with Vrabel.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a very controversial firing at the time, and Tennessee took a massive step back. Now, I do think, despite spending money last offseason, I think some of that was sort of expected. I don't know. It seemed like the expectations versus the reality of that roster were just kind of different for me, but maybe I'm just looking at it too far away. But anyway, they clearly wanted to go in a new direction. Whether it worked, it didn't work this last season. And Vrabel has a good pedigree. Like you said, he has a good track record of success. He did very well there. He did good things at Ohio State before he went over there. Houston, obviously, as assistant. So, we'll see how it works out in New England. But, from everything that was said, he's a big culture guy. He's going to establish that. I don't think he's a huge X's and O's guy, so it is going to come down to the hiring of the coordinators, which they've already done. And, this is it feels like a complete 180 because the interesting thing with last season with Gerard Mayo, because this, back to after 20 plus years of no coaching changes or anything like that, not needing to make a change, it's back-to-back years New England's changing their entire coaching staff. And last year, it was already kind of written in the contract or whatever, that Gerard Mayo was going to be an appointed head coach as soon as Belichick was done. That happened probably sooner than everybody expected. And it was a whole new staff of very, very young and inexperienced coaches. Covington, the defensive coordinator they had last season, was a first-year defensive coordinator, but he was viewed very much as an up-and-coming coach. Van Pelt, he's been around a long time, but also he hasn't called plays in many, many years. And he was the new offensive coordinator. This season feels like a whole 180 because it's Vrabel, who's had his experience as a head coach, Josh McDaniel, who, despite an up and down career track record, I still think is a very well-established and good offensive coordinator. He had good years, even with Cam Newton and Mac Jones. He had very strong offensive seasons for New England, which fell off a cliff as soon as he left, and, more pieces left too. So having all of these pieces in the building, it feels a lot different than last season because they are going with these experienced pieces and hoping for the best. And, I think there's a lot more optimism about this hiring and all that than last season.
I agree. Is it a little weird that they keep hiring former Patriots?
Yes. Yeah. I think there is an argument to maybe we need to get away from this Belichick Brady era and just cut bait with it and start over. But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is there. It was between him and Ben Johnson, I guess, and they ended up going with Vrabel. My kind of conspiracy theorist sort of take on it, based on what I read last year and like all that, I think if Robert Kraft knew Mike Vrabel was getting fired by Tennessee, he would have hired Vrabel last season. I don't think he was prepared for that, and I think this is him trying to fix that mistake because I think he would have wanted Vrabel last season. So yeah, I just think it's one of those things that it feels like maybe you want to start fresh and try and do something new and try and start over because that feels very old. But Belichick won a lot, and this is someone he viewed as one of his early proteges. Vrabel's been around the Patriots organization for years and been involved with been a name in the Patriots organization for over 2 decades. So I do think there is a justification to it.
Yeah, obviously the Vrabel or the Belichick coaching tree is notoriously not great, although Vrabel is kind of the exception to that rule. So, and I honestly kind of think too, it's like, okay, in theory, yeah, let's get someone else. It would be weird if they went and like hired Rob Gronkowski or something. Like this is the guy who's been to a conference championship with Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback. Like he's gotten to 1 seed in a different year, although didn't go on to playoffs, but still, you got the 1 seed. Like this is someone, and they got the 1 seed when Derrick Henry was injured too. So
yeah,
he has the best resume on the board. So, whether he's for a Patriot or not, it's still a good hire.
Yeah. And, he is viewed very much as like a Belichick protege because obviously he played for him and then coached for him immediately. But also like, I think the exception with Vrabel is also like his primary like big coaching jobs before becoming a head coach were with Ohio State and Houston. Like it wasn't necessarily Patriots to head coach sort of situation. Mm-hmm. So he has a lot more experience around the league. He obviously played for a very long time too. So it'll be interesting. I want to see, I am going to be curious to see what the offense looks like next season because obviously it was a very old school sort of approach in Tennessee when he was there for obvious reasons because they had Derrick Henry. But he's obviously not going to have Derrick Henry in New England, and he's not going to have any player like Derrick Henry for probably the rest of his coaching career, right? So how does the offense upgrade there? How does it update? And I think that's where you have to put your faith in McDaniels as, once again, I still think he's a really good offensive coordinator, even if like the head coach things are laughably bad.
Yeah. And we'll see. Again, at the end of the day, though, it all comes down to Drake May, right? That's just how football works. It all comes down to the quarterback. So we'll see how it goes. Kyle, let's go number 3 on the list.
Yeah, so the funny thing is like I kind of had like a tier 1 and tier 2. I think those were the tier 1 coaching hirings, like those were the two best. And then 3 and 4 I think are kind of similar from 1 and 2, just I would say a little bit below as far as tier rankings go. One's a very hot shot coordinator and the other one was a head coach for me. But I went with Liam Cohen. Going to Jacksonville, kind of a messy sort of reporting around this. Obviously, like he signed an extension or whatever in Tampa Bay and was prepared to go back to Tampa Bay. Jacksonville came back at him, and he ended up taking the job in Jacksonville. And, I think this is a good job by the Jaguars. There's no messing around with this one. You went the old head coach route last time. It didn't work out. Obviously, Doug Peterson had his red flags, but you have to fix this offense, and you have to fix Trevor Lawrence. And you're getting a coach who has done very well at his last two stops, fixing some quarterbacks. And yeah,
Hold
so I
on,
think it's
fixing Baker Mayfield. He's been good. He's been good for 2 years.
fair enough, but progressing Baker Mayfield. Let's go there.
Sure.
So his last two quarterbacks he's done a very good job with, and neither one of them had the pedigree of Trevor Lawrence. Even though Baker Mayfield was the number one pick, I'm still going with it. Trevor Lawrence was a bigger prospect. He's going to try and fix Trevor Lawrence now this season and this Jaguars offense, which has a lot of talent. If they can fix some of the little parts of their roster, especially defensively on the offensive line, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a quick turnaround if he does well.
Gotcha. I had him one spot lower. I had him at 4. I think we'll disagree on who I have next, but we can talk about it. But for now, I mean, the best thing is, hey, he can't leave you for another job, right? That kind of the biggest criticism. Kentucky fans were upset that he kept leaving. And obviously Buccaneers fans not thrilled with how it all went down. There was a very funny clip that went viral where when he was asked what's the most important thing in a coach, he said honesty, which is maybe not the thing to say when you went behind your former coach's back to get the head coaching job. But I mean, like, Cohen is weird because he was considered I think we talked about him as one of the top head coaching candidates going into this. So I think if it just happened, we'd all be like, yeah, sure. Obviously, there's bad juju there. I don't know if that matters, but there is that there, which I think doesn't help. And then also, I mean, hasn't exactly inspired. He is the annual not great opening press conference guy, right? Every year has one. Sometimes they really hit. Nick Sirianni was that guy. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Matt Patricia did not have a great start and did not end up going well. All that being said, really good X's and O's guy, similar to Ben Johnson. We don't know how the rest of this stuff is going to go, but on paper, he should be someone who can work and help out Jacksonville.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I mean, we'll see. There have been some funny press conferences. I still got Jonathan Gannon's eyes just seared into my brain. I think what's that?
Pew pew.
Yeah.
Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah. Look, it's one of those things though where I think at a baseline he's going to make this offense better, and that's what I want to see. That's the first and foremost what I want to see. I want to see this quarterback play well. I want to see this offense play well, and I'm hoping the rest of the team will figure itself out along the way. And I mean the whole if you could, I think the coaching itself is why I put Cohen 3. I think the candidate itself is why I put him 3. If you're gonna argue the process for hiring the coach, Jacksonville's probably 6 or 7, depending on how you feel about the same situation.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing of bringing Trent Baalke back and then basically scaring away Ben Johnson because he didn't want to work with Trent Baalke. He wanted his own GM choice. And then firing Trent Baalke to then still hire a different offensive coordinator who was maybe the number 2 offensive coordinator head coach candidate on the market. That was a bit of a mess for me and not something I love to see if you're a Jaguars fan, but I still think they got a pretty good candidate overall. And that's why I do like the hire. It's just, I mean, it could be one of those things where maybe this just isn't the best situation for a coach based on what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and also I think they gave him a Ben Johnson level contract as well. So it really was I think what happened was because Jaguars fans were very upset about the situation when Liam Cohen wasn't going to join with them and instead said, actually, I'm going to stay with Tampa Bay. They were kind of what are we doing here? I almost wonder if the Jaguars owner was just you know what, screw it, fire the GM, Liam Cohen, here's a bunch of money. Let's make it work. Which it's kind of been a Jaguars issue throughout their history, right? Is they find a shiny toy and just throw a bunch of money at it. And I mean, they always spend a lot in free agency and it rarely works well.
Yeah. It's a team operated by the guys who run the second biggest wrestling organization in the world, and they operate like it. Like that's just that's the way I view it.
Yeah, but I think, and listen, obviously as a Tampa Bay fan, I'm not rooting against Liam Cohen. Whatever. I don't love how he left. It is what it is. Like, he didn't do anything to me. He did something to Todd Bowles. Like, it's there's this weird section of like Jaguars Twitter and Buccaneers Twitter that is like feuding with each other. I'm over it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, like, he wanted to be a head coach. Yeah, so he got the money he wanted and took the opportunity. I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think there should be bad blood but with that. He does move a lot, though. I don't know what that means, but he does move around a lot.
Well, to be clear, so it wasn't just that he didn't he took the head coaching job. It was that the Buccaneers were showing up to the facility ready to be with him as he signs his new contract, and all of a sudden he's not there, and then says that his kid is sick and that's why he can't show up. Says that later, and then it turns out he's actually interviewing for the Jacksonville Jaguars job, even though part of the deal was that he wouldn't interview again if he signed the contract. So I think that was the more the go behind their back issue was, I think, more frustrating than the like taking the job. Go ahead, take the job. But I think that's what people got upset about.
Yeah, that's probably not great. I get it.
Yeah, it could have handled it better. But I mean, again, who among us hasn't done something like that in the past where you're like, I probably should have done that better.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. The drama is messy, obviously, but like I said, I do think he's a good head coaching candidate. So we'll see.
Got to work on the Duval.
Yeah, that's not great. I mean, I don't love the chant anyways. Like,
that's a hot take.
Really?
Are you not a Good Place guy?
Well, I like the show Good Place. I just having gone to a Jaguars game and having people just yell Duval all the time. I don't know. It's a bit goofy for me. I'm not for it.
Okay, so it's not quite as good as the Raiders.
I mean, we're just not good at chanting in America in chants. That's just what it is. Like, we just can't be doing this. Like, it just looks bad on us. Like, just go and cheer and clap and yell and then move on. Like, we're not good at chanting. We don't have to do it.
Okay, hot takes from Kyle here. Let's move on. 3 head coaches left to talk about. Kyle, I don't think this is someone who's super high on your list. I'm going Aaron Glenn, who was number 3 on my board. Where was he on your board?
He was 5. I mean, like, look, I think I like Aaron Glenn. I like the candidate too. I thought he was going to be a head coach this season, and I was okay. I was very happy with it. And I do like him. I just give me your thoughts first because it's your pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the X's and O's were really good throughout, and even though this, I think you look at the numbers. I think people are going to say, "Why are you hiring a defensive coordinator who like hasn't had a ton of success on defense?" Which is kind of fair, but like I think I like paying more attention to, okay, what have you done with the personnel and how has that impacted things, as opposed to just like which defensive coordinator has the best defense, because obviously talent matters a lot. I do think Glenn has gotten the most out of the defenses that he's had throughout the course of his time in his 4 years with the Lions. I also just think, like, you hear what the Lions players say. He seems like a quote unquote leader of men. He's from the Dan Campbell coaching tree, which we saw how like Dan Campbell operates and how he was able to turn that organization around. And I kind of think you have to be, strong headed to work with New York. So yeah, I mean, I get that there are some similarities of Saleh, who's another like players like him, really good X's and O's guy. But like, I don't know. Like, I think that I don't love defensive head coaches because usually they're too cautious in game management stuff. I can't imagine Aaron Glenn coming from Detroit is going to be too cautious in that stuff, right? Maybe I'm way off, but like, this feels like if you're going to hire a defensive coordinator, he's the guy you should hire.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear the arguments for it. Like I said, I did really like him as a candidate. I'm just of the belief that, like, I don't know. It feels too close to Saleh for me. It feels like you're just doing the same thing over again. And I would have liked him to go to a team maybe a bit younger that he can kind of instill that culture in, because I mean, he is he's going to go like instill a culture into what, Aaron Rodgers? Like Aaron Rodgers.
Well, yeah, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah, a self-proclaimed enigma. I mean, I don't even know who's going to quarterback this team next season. So maybe they do blow the whole thing up and it starts over. But like, I don't know. I would have. I think I would have liked this. I would have liked the Glenn hire more in a different situation than I think this one. And I think that's probably my weakest criticism of it. But it's also a bit of a criticism that I have for it. In that I would have just. I probably would have gone in a different direction if I was the Jets because, just because I don't think raw X's and O defensive coordinator is what you need again.
Maybe I guess. Well, isn't like as the thing like anytime you show up as a head coach and like there's ping pong tables, you take the ping pong tables and say we're going to be more serious. And anytime there isn't ping pong tables, then you put ping pong tables there so that way you can say, oh, we're going to have more fun and we're going to like I feel like it's something like that where maybe you want a breath of fresh air. Although I will say, like, I mean, okay, Sala was gone for most of last season. Like and Aaron Glenn obviously is a different person. So like I get that there are similarities, but I don't know. I just think on paper he's a guy who I feel like checks a lot of positive boxes.
He does, but I also feel like the same time, like, you know, and honestly, it's not even just Sala. I mean, you can go through it all. Like Todd Bowles checked a lot of positive boxes when he was hired out of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I would even go back to Rex Ryan was a little bit older than these guys as candidates, but Rex Ryan was also a raw, great X's and O's defensive coordinator hired as a head coach. Like they're hiring this. Yeah, sure. They all work to an extent, but
Rex Ryan got I would say making multiple conference championship games is more working than almost making the playoffs a couple times.
Yes, they did. He did good stuff there, but at the same time, like they all kind of fizzle out because they can't solve the quarterback situation. This franchise cannot solve it, and that's not just on the head coach to do, but it is a big head coach responsibility is having that situation at this point. And it just feels like they keep going for the same coach over and over again. And I don't know if we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over, then how is anything in New York going to be fixed? Maybe.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. The Jets have a ton of issues. I'm not trying to say that like, but all I'm doing is evaluating the quarterbacks or the coaches.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, they also have to. That's part of my thing, though. Like, this wouldn't be on. Like, if I just rank my top 6 candidates from this offseason, he's probably third, maybe even fourth. But I also think, I do think situation does matter, and like, I honestly think if Aaron Glenn went to Dallas, I probably would have had this third in the rankings. I would have. Like, I just think that would have made a lot more sense with an established offense, with a offense that I think I still trust no matter what. Even if, like, you know, you have your questions about Dak Prescott, whatever, I think that offense would be good no matter what. And he can just kind of instill a culture into Dallas that matters. I think in New York, it's a whole different situation because they have to fix the roster, establish a whole new game plan, build around maybe a new quarterback. And Aaron Glenn has to figure that all out with his first head coaching job.
Yeah, that should have happened. Why didn't that happen? They should have. Dallas. We'll get to them in a second. Kyle, number 5, you put Pete Carroll.
Yes, I put Pete Carroll. I had him 4th. And this is just one of those things where it's like, I don't to the end goal. I don't think it's gonna like work out to like extreme positives. Like, I don't think he's gonna win a Super Bowl with the Raiders. He may not even win a playoff game with the Raiders, obviously. But I think he's gonna elevate this situation. And I think for plenty of Pete Carroll's faults, I think this team has lacked, you know, as we talked about culture and stuff with Aaron Glenn, I think Las Vegas has lacked some culture to a huge extent. It feels like lately. I think they're in this touristy stadium that doesn't feel like it gets a lot of excitement, especially when the team's bad. There just doesn't seem to be a whole ton of energy in that building all the time or with that franchise. And I mean, Pete Carroll's all energy. There's a reason why he's coming back to coaching as the oldest coach in the NFL again. Is this guy, I mean, he lives and breathes this thing. And I think that's the one thing is like, was it perfect all the time in Seattle? No, but he established a positive culture that I still think is over that umbrella at Seattle to this very day. That team is still, that franchise is still pretty well run. And I think he's going to do the same thing in Las Vegas, even if he's not the guy that wins them a Super Bowl in the future.
Yeah, I mean, obviously things are kind of a mess right now with the Raiders, and they might just need someone like Pete Carroll to kind of clean things up. I mean, it's not that different than when they signed John Gruden to that huge deal, right? And John Gruden, I think, like wasn't a smashing success, but like he made them better. They were like a fringe playoff team and made the playoffs the year that he had his issue in the middle of the season and Rich Bisaccia took over. So like I don't know. I get it. I understand the logic, but again, this is the old. Did the Bears just hire John Fox? Like, I think of that. Of like, are you just getting a guy who, okay, yes, is established and will help you out in other ways, but the question is, what is the ceiling for a guy who ultimately Seattle even said, you know what, like, I don't know if we're gonna be more than just a fringe playoff team, which I get it. Raiders will take that, but in theory, it's just tough. So I had him at 5. I agree with you. I think there's positives, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I only had him at 4. Like there wasn't much difference for me. I could have argued Aaron Glenn too. It's just the whole thing. My whole point is like the general like. Can you draw some similarities to like a John Fox, Jeff Fisher thing? Sure, but at the same time, like I think those are guys who had some like good seasons that were otherwise pretty middling coaches. Where Pete Carroll was pretty successful his entire tenure in Seattle. Like
Yeah.
not every season was an A+ season, but
Mm-hmm.
I would say for the most part it was a very good tenure in Seattle. And obviously they did win a Super Bowl. They made another one, had plenty of success there. So I just think he's a guy who kind of gets it as a head coach. And like I said, I think he's just it may just be setting things up and kind of setting things in motion for the next guy eventually down the road because he is older. I don't know how long he's going to want to do this, but I do think that's something that at least puts Las Vegas in the right direction after these previous hires didn't work out.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. This just try to get things back on track, and maybe even in a couple of years. Are you spinning a coin or what's going on there?
Yeah, the coin keeps dropping. My bad. I'll put it down.
Okay, no, but yeah, I mean it can work out. I mean it's fine. I think the idea is let's get back on track, and then hopefully in 3 years he'll retire and we can upgrade.
Yeah, he'll probably move into the Bruce Arians front office thing and then go from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a big job. There's a big overhaul with this roster, and I think it's going to take a long time. But like I said, I think having that culture guy just goes a long way.
Yeah, Kyle, let's move on now. Finally, last on our list, Brian Schottenheimer of the Dallas Cowboys, who is a bit of an odd choice here. As I mean, first, this whole Cowboys thing is just confusing. So they block Mike McCarthy from interviewing with the Chicago Bears, which made us assume that, okay, they want to keep Mike McCarthy. They ultimately do not. Mike McCarthy leaves as his contract was up, but he leaves. They then decide to hire the offensive coordinator who has been there the past couple of years and he was a coaching analyst prior to that, and Brian Schottenheimer. He's been a offensive coordinator before, in the NFL with Seattle. Oh, you all right, Kyle?
Good Lord. Yeah, I'm good. My bad.
Okay. Are you recording this on a boat or something? What's going on?
Something's rocking. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, my bad. Hit my mic.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, he was offensive coordinator for the Seahawks in kind of the let Russ Cook era in the late 2010s. So, that's what he is. And listen, I don't know how he interviews. Sometimes someone who doesn't have a resume ends up working out, but he doesn't have a resume. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where maybe it works out, but at the same time, it's a gutsy hire, that's for sure. His dad's obviously a legend. And
sorry, I'm laughing at the chat. I'm interrupting everything. Go ahead. Just like the Kyle bugging out today, that one, and then Kyle's takes causing earthquakes.
Yeah, it might be. So yeah, I mean, his dad's obviously a legend. Look, and obviously he's been around the NFL for a long time. I mean, his offensive coordinator resume goes back to 2006, and it's been very hit or miss. So who knows? Maybe he is a better head coach than coordinator because I don't think his coordinator was overall the best stuff. So we'll see. But it is risky, and it's just like how many times have you seen these assistants get hired who have been assistants? I mean, if you go back to just NFL coaching assistant, he's been an NFL assistant since 1997. Like,
yeah.
How many times has a guy been an assistant for 28 years or whatever that is, and gets a head coaching job and then it works out. Like that just
Right.
feels very few and far between at this point in this modern era of coaching. It just feels like he was a career assistant that's now getting a head coaching job, and I don't know. It feels like they could be looking for a new one sooner than we think.
I mean, it feels like this is like Jerry Jones saying, "I want a yes man who will do what I want," like a Jason Garrett type.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities probably. So,
or
I could
maybe just
definitely
didn't want to do a head coaching search. Maybe it's just one of those
yeah.
like who do we got here? Oh, but people like Brian. All right, let's just make him a head coach.
Yeah, and it's just so bizarre because like the other day, why not just bring Mike McCarthy back at this point? Like,
Right. I don't understand why either one of I don't get why Mike McCarthy wants to leave. I don't get why it seemed like they were like it was a year thing where like McCarthy wanted more than 3 years and then they end up giving Brian Schottenheimer 4 years. So I don't understand what anyone is doing in this situation. This is like a breakup when I'm like, what do you mean? Like you guys were good together.
yeah, it's such a bizarre thing. I don't know, man. Like, the Cowboys make no sense. So, if I said
this is when
the
it drives me
process,
crazy. You
yeah,
called me a Dak hater, but like it's the whole organization is just like, yeah, this works, whatever.
yeah. And it's like, I said if we were to rank the process for hiring a head coach, I said Jacksonville 7. Well, this is a close 7. It's probably 6 at this point. And the Saints still haven't even hired a head coach, and they're ahead of these two. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's a bizarre turn of events. And yeah, I mean, we'll see how it works out.
Yes, we will. Kyle, that is it for this segment, but we got a couple more segments left before we head out here. So first, we got 23-ish minutes, so we can take around 10 minutes or so on each of these. Kyle, you have compiled a list of your 10 most disappointing teams in 2024. Why don't you get into it? I'll let you have the floor here.
Yeah, I didn't really have a parameter set for this or anything. It didn't have to do anything. I mean, some of them are, I think preseason expectations based. I think some of them are how the season finished for that team. It could be any combination of those items. Like it didn't have to just be from preseason expectations to now, these are how I rank the top 10 most disappointing teams, because I think there's a good variance in how teams can be judged on disappointment. So top 10 most disappointing teams for me. This one is a preseason expectation one. And the top 3 feel very obvious to me in this order too, I would say. But we could obviously leave it up for debate. The New York Jets spent a lot of money in draft capital to get this roster. And they fired their coach midseason, ended up with 5 wins. And I mean, it was pretty. The worst thing about the Jets is they did all this. They were in the news for so long. And then we watched this team and we didn't want to talk about the Jets all season because it was just such a unfun team to watch. The defense took a massive, massive step back, especially after Robert Saleh got fired. Some of their best players basically all of their best players did not play to their standards this season. I don't think anybody you would say came out better than last year. And
DJ Reed.
It was DJ Reed. There you go.
And a contract year too. Perfect what the Jets need.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely not what you wanted to see there. And it was a disappointed season for the Jets for sure.
Yeah, no, they're number. So we're starting with number 1, I guess, or are these in no particular order?
This is number 1. Yeah, I went 1 to 10.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean it's number 1 for both. I mean, this is one of the most disappointing seasons of all time. Like there was legitimately talk of like, okay, can they pull up Matthew Stafford Rams? Can they pull a Tom Brady Bucks? And they didn't even do so bad that they get a great draft pick either. I think they're picking 7th. What a mess.
Yeah. And there was definitely skeptics. Not everybody thought this team was going to the Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. But I think everybody should have expected better than 5 wins. I mean, that's a whole different level of bad.
Yeah.
And like you said, it wasn't even like Rodgers got hurt and they got the first pick or anything like that. They're in the middle of the bottom. They're late part of the bottom 10, and it's not looking any better.
And they traded for a player for a rental and Devontae Adams on top of it. Like they lost draft capital this year.
Yeah, not great, Bob. But yeah, it was number 2. Let's steamroll right along here. This one's also obvious. They made the Super Bowl. They missed the playoffs. You have to be in the top 10. San Francisco 49ers, without a doubt. Some injury bad luck, but overall, this team should have been making the playoffs, and this was a frustrating year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know how much of it was the injuries, but even injuries still could make a disappointing year. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to not pick a team that, again, they were, one fourth down play away from winning the Super Bowl last year, and now they missed the playoffs. There's some questions about Brock Purdy now, which those are out there, right? So not what you want.
Yeah, and it's another one where it felt like everyone took a step back. I mean, this season got off to a weird start with several players holding out before the season started. Christian McCaffrey couldn't get healthy this season. Brandon Ayuk finally gets his contract sorted out, gets hurt. Trent Williams gets his situation figured out, but we'll see going forward. And yeah, it just felt like from the jump, this was kind of a disaster. So I wouldn't be surprised if it gets better next season. I wouldn't be surprised if Brock Purdy plays better next season, but it definitely was a step back. So we'll see how this goes and how they regroup, or if they try and get aggressive to make some changes around there. Moving right along to number 3, unless you have anything else to add.
No, go ahead.
All right, number 3. Another one, like I said, these top 3 felt very obvious. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. As we just talked about all these teams that could have made changes, all that sort of thing. Cincinnati obviously infamously does not like to change coaches. They wait as long as possible. They didn't do anything this season. And, I think you could argue Zach Taylor staying on as the head coach and have a pretty good justification for it. But at the same time, like, how many of these slow starts are we going to let the Bengals get off to before we have to talk about what's going on in that building? So another disappointing season started off by losing to the lowly New England Patriots week 1, and that was basically the reason they missed the playoffs.
Right. And for a team that I think the one thing you would say is at least Joe Burrow does look like a Super Bowl winning quarterback type, or at least an MVP type quarterback. And at least you did turn it around towards the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, they're just a team that should be competing for Super Bowls, not playoff spots. So I'm completely with you.
Yeah. Just a frustrating season. And like, I still think that it's just one of those things where I think if you simulate this season 10 times, the Bengals might win a Super Bowl, right? Like in some of those scenarios, they might actually make the conference championship multiple times, kind of thing. And instead we get a scenario where they miss the playoffs. So they have to be up there. Weird season for the Bengals. And speaking of weird teams and weird franchises, number 4, another one that spent a lot of money this offseason, had much higher expectations and missed the playoffs. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They have the worst division in football. Everyone expected them to make the playoffs after spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a quarterback and drafting a quarterback in the top 10. And instead, the $100 million quarterback did not look good. And they didn't play the rookie quarterback that they drafted in the top, in the first round until it was too late. And instead, this team was at home at the end of the season.
I get it. I'll push back a little bit. So I get you're correct. I mean, they were favored to win the division. The Kirk Cousins thing completely backfired. The one thing I would say is it's so hard to get a good quarterback. Michael Penix did look really good when he came in and played. And I think that's maybe the saving grace for Atlanta, is that the good news about putting so much resources into the quarterback position is that it seems like it might have worked out, and they might still have a good quarterback on a rookie deal, even if you basically wasted 2.5 years of that rookie deal by paying Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a bit of a saving grace and probably why this team isn't higher. But at the same time, like, how much of this stuff also worked out for them in season? Like, Tampa Bay, riddled with injuries, they were able to beat twice this season. So they had that tiebreaker. They only needed a tie Tampa to make the playoffs. But instead it was losses to New Orleans, a big blowout loss to Denver where they didn't play well. Just over and over again, it felt like they were falling short in these games. And yeah, I mean, maybe some of it was bad luck, but at the same time, like, it was a team that seemed to have a lot go in its favor throughout the season, and it still wasn't enough.
Coaching didn't go great either, so you still have some questions there. I get it. There were some good things and some bad things, but I don't think it's crazy to have them on the list. Who's number 5?
All right, number 5 for me. This one, this was a quiet buzz, I think, in the offseason, but everyone was kind of on Houston at one point during the season. And then there was some pushback and said, wait, you got to keep an eye on Jacksonville this year. They played well to end the season, all that kind of stuff. Watch out for the Jaguars. We watched out for the Jaguars and nothing happened too much there. This team really struggled, and I would have this team high on the list. I think we all expected more than 4 wins from this team. And it wasn't even just that they won 4 games. There was times where they looked non-competitive. Obviously, that Detroit game was a huge factor in that. But, like, I don't know. This team should have been much more competitive throughout the season, I think, and especially early on when they basically were out of it before they even could blink. And I mean, by week 2, it was basically like by the end of week 3, when they got blown out by the Bills, it was basically like, okay, Doug Peterson. They're waiting for Doug Peterson to get fired.
Yeah, and it was so quick. I mean, the fact that Lawrence has seemingly taken a step back is the real issue because you just paid him all that money, and now it's like his contract hasn't kicked in yet, and you have that going on. So you got to figure out a way to make it work. Brian Thomas Jr. looked good, right? That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think Trayvon Walker's looked like he can be a natural player, so that's good. But like, yeah, as a whole, I mean, I agree. This is a situation that we didn't think was horrible. Again, Kyle, it was just last season that the Jaguars were the 1 seed for 3 hours. Now they're one of the worst teams in the league. So it's I agree. They good pick.
Yeah. Yeah. No notes beyond that. Like I said, I think they should have definitely done a lot better. Number 6, we're gonna go with a team that again had expectations to make the playoffs, and yes, it was some bad luck, a quarterback injury, that kind of thing. But this Miami Dolphins thing just felt like weird from the start. And now we're at the point where at the end of the season, Tyreek Hill's asking for trades in his post-game press conference of Week 18. That is not a great situation to be in. And I think that from top to bottom, this Miami thing felt kind of over mid-season. And we were just kind of waiting for the end. I think this is going to be a very interesting off season for what we're looking at Miami because they can't run this thing back again, can they?
I think there's going to be changes. I think Tyreek Hill might be the one to go here. I don't know. I mean, they could try a new defensive coordinator, I suppose. Again,
yeah. Obviously, losing Vic Fangio in the offseason too didn't help this whole situation because he wanted to go closer to home, all that. But it just felt like every decision from that point on was a miss, and it was a frustrating year.
Yeah. Number 7, where are you going?
Let me go with the Cleveland Browns. Made the playoffs
higher, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it. I was thinking about moving them up, but they made the playoffs with Joe Flacco last season, and we thought maybe if Deshaun just plays a little bit better, and instead he was the worst quarterback in the NFL when he played. And not only did the team miss the playoffs and were kind of embarrassing at points, but you still have that contract to deal with, and he's out for next season with an Achilles, so you just have dead money sitting there with his injury. So, yeah, I don't really know where it goes from here, but it's definitely not going up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing they have going for them is you got the number 2 overall pick, so it can't be that like for the Titans, they actually kind of had an okay season because they got the number 1 overall pick. You get the number 2 overall pick. At least that's not the worst place to be. But I agree. I mean, this is the Deshaun Watson contract is what just ruins everything.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to it. Like, what do they do from here? This franchise feels like it's set back another 5 years at this point. So, like, I don't know what to expect. I mean, maybe they hit on something generational with the number 2 pick, and that changes everything. But it feels like at a minimum, dealing with this contract and dealing with this situation, you are set back for the next 2 or 3 years at minimum. And then it's going to take a while to rebuild after that.
Yeah. Number 8, where are you going?
This one might be a hot take.
Okay.
Because they played well throughout the season, and they're going to have the MVP of the NFL. But it's got to be Baltimore for me. Like, at what point do we have to start talking about, like, everything worked out for them? They got Derrick Henry in the offseason. He was terrific. Lamar Jackson had an even better season than last year, and he won the MVP last season. He's going to win another MVP. And still you're losing to Buffalo in round 2. And you're not finding a way to put yourself at the table and give yourself that opportunity at a Super Bowl. And so I think to a certain point, like, yeah, it's disappointing. Is it unfair to start saying Super Bowl or bust for Baltimore? Maybe, but like, can we just reach the Super Bowl or bust? Is that a fair expectation at this point with everything that they have? They have maybe the best running back in the NFL, maybe the best quarterback in the NFL throughout the last 2 regular seasons. And I think that it's a disappointing finish again for Baltimore, for a team that wants to win Super Bowls and feels like this is their window, and that window is slowly but surely closing.
I get it. I think it's tough. I mean, they did have a good year, right? They made the divisional
Yeah.
round. For a lot of teams, that'd be a great year. The Derrick Henry move worked very, very well for them, and I do feel like they feel like a team that can win the Super Bowl, which is better than a lot of other teams. I understand it. Like, it is a disappointing, it's a bitter end to lose yet again earlier than it felt like they should have, because they were favored to win that game by a point and a half or whatever it was. Um, I understand it. I will say, I mean, for them, getting to the Super Bowl is probably the harder part than winning it. And with the who to have to deal with in the AFC, and
Yeah.
also how they play against NFC teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't. Who knows what happens in the future? Like everything, this league is so evolving, right? Like things change
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And I've said a lot about the AFC this season. Like as long as you have, you know, one of the guys, and you still have Lamar Jackson, even if there's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, that kind of thing. As long as you have one of the guys, that feels like the most important part of this. And then you just hope that one time it breaks through for you. But at the same time, not only is Patrick Mahomes seemingly impossible to beat, you didn't even get to Patrick Mahomes this season. And then you just look at the overall fact that, like, there are more guys coming too. Like, you look at a guy, there are young quarterbacks that are on the up and up that can make noise.
Drake
Obviously
May.
Justin Herbert, maybe one day. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see. I do think he has that talent. You see a guy like Justin Herbert who, yes, he's 0-2 in the playoffs, but they won 11 games without a receiver this year, and they have a great head coach in Jim Harbaugh. So, like, it's not getting any easier for Baltimore. And as this team gets older and older, it becomes a question of it. When it felt like, maybe Lamar gets one at some point, maybe the Ravens get one with this core at some point. It's now saying, like, if he gets one in, it feels like it's not going to happen at this point.
Yeah. Two left. What are your last two, Kyle?
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys, another team, won the
Mm-hmm.
division last season. Obviously this is another one where it felt like the preseason kind of went completely wrong for them. Micah Parsons was hurt. Deron Bland started the season on IR. But I also think, and then obviously Dak Prescott got hurt. That changed everything. But
Mm-hmm.
it just seemed like everything except for CeeDee Lamb got worse this season. And Parsons ended up playing very well when he did come back, but it wasn't enough to keep them afloat. So not only that, then you have this whole coaching situation, the offseason we just talked about. You don't even get bad enough to get a good draft pick because you won some games at the end of the year. Just felt like kind of a waste of time for Dallas.
Yeah, completely agree. Where are you going? And then the head coaching thing, I probably would have had them higher, but I think that's just, I don't know. I'm just, I don't hate, the weird thing is I don't hate the Cowboys. I just consistently dislike the move. It's similar to how I feel about the Giants, where it's like, I have no beef with you. I just don't like the decisions you make.
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of that situation. And then, speaking of 10, we have the New York Giants.
Yeah.
Look, this team didn't have expectations to win this season, but
And they
I
were
think the
still
word
disappointed.
was that Drew Lock game the most disappointed a team's been in a dominant quarterback performance probably of all time.
Yeah.
So not only was this season absolutely miserable, but in a 2 quarterback draft, you end up with a 3rd pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in. And so you don't get the good pick. And then not only that, Drew Lock took you out of a playoff, out of a top 2 pick, out of the number 1 pick. And that just feels like such a backbreaker.
And he followed up the final game of the season just playing horrible too, which is the funniest part. It's just had a random elite performance against the Colts, who needed to win that game to keep their season alive. I agree. Great list. The only other team I would throw in there is, could you consider the Saints as well, especially with how it started?
Yeah, I think the Saints are a good one because, like you said, they did start 2-0 and then completely fell off a cliff. I didn't have preseason expectations for them that high. I only had 7 wins in the preseason predictor I did. But yeah, I would say very much a disappointing season. And then the other one for me was the Colts, who, it felt like they were doing everything they could to make the playoffs this season and still didn't make the playoffs. So definitely a disappointing season for me.
Yeah, and lack of development with Richardson. I think that's fair. Kyle, final segment of the show here. So who is the next Saquon Barkley? Here's what I did, Kyle, is I got 10 players and teams that they could go to. And what I mean by next Saquon Barkley, it doesn't necessarily mean make the Super Bowl, but I guess these are players that I think the criteria was you have to be a free agent, Some of these free agents are just going to get signed by their team, but you have to be a free agent that I could see going somewhere else. And if they went somewhere else, we'd all be sitting here next year as they're playing in the Super Bowl saying, why the hell did that team let that guy go to that other team? That's kind of my philosophy. Does that all make sense?
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense to me. So yeah, I mean, it's the guys who could swing the season. It feels like next year for sure. And yeah, I think what Saquon did in Philadelphia was pretty well documented, and they definitely needed a shake up. And yeah, he lifted them to the next level.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm looking at. And also like a perfect fit, because when Saquon went to the Eagles, it's like, oh, well, that's a perfect fit. That's also kind of what I'm looking at. So I'll start off with number one as well. My number one would be T. Higgins to the Commanders, right? Commanders have cap space. Getting an elite receiver to them, that just feels like a perfect fit.
Yeah. And it could happen. I mean, it could definitely happen. We'll see what happens with T. Higgins this offseason. Obviously, I think Cincinnati should try and keep him at all costs. So, yeah, I absolutely think that it's the number one. I mean, he's the number one free agent on the market, and this would be the number one destination for him to potentially swing a Super Bowl because they just made the conference championship. It'll be interesting to see how Washington approaches this because I think they're going to end up with a receiver, whether it's him or trading for someone like Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, something like that, and going from there. It just depends on if T. Higgins is going to be the guy.
Right. Yeah. And a couple of these are like you could change out the player or the team a little bit, but having fun here. But yeah, it feels like it's something that could very much happen. It's not like they need a receiver, but just again, part of it is like a luxury pick. Let's move on. Let's go to number two. Kyle, maybe a bit of a homer pick, but let me explain myself. Khalil Mack to the Bucs. My thought is it's like Todd Bowles loves his blitzing. He likes to have pass rushers. This could be a scenario of I think the question is, could the Bucs really go on a deep playoff run to make it the Saquon Barkley thing work? I don't know. But like you could see it being like, oh, why did they let Khalil Mack go? He has 15 sacks because Todd Bowles blitzes all the time and he has one-on-one matchups all day kind of thing.
I mean, as far as fit goes, it makes a ton of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you're going to say if he's going to turn into a team that's a Super Bowl contender, is this the best choice? But at the same time, I think as far as scheme and personnel goes, I think it is the perfect fit. So I agree with that.
Yeah, a couple I was a little bit liberal on. But in honor of fairness, I decided to go with for my next pick. I said, okay, well, let me get rid of one of the guys on my team then. How about Chris Godwin to the 49ers?
Another one that does make sense. They got to figure out some things there. Is Deebo Samuel going to be on this team next season? How do they approach that? And then, yeah, they could absolutely bring in another receiver to help out at the pass catcher group. So it could be kind of a reshuffling the deck a bit for them. And yeah, I think Chris Godwin could fit for a lot of teams, I feel like, in this category. Could he go down south to Los Angeles, for example? I think that'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I thought this could, this one would be a tough, thing to work cap-wise. I don't think it would happen, really. But it just feels like it would be like this would be the perfect fit, like Godwin in a Shanahan offense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do think it'd be very he would dominate in that offense. The way that they use their slot guys, he would absolutely thrive. I think it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. Kyle, the next player, so I gave the 49ers someone. That means I guess I have to get rid of someone from the 49ers. How about Dre Greenlaw to the Bills? Have him play opposite Matt Milano. You can have I think the Bills don't have a ton of money, but he might not require a ton of money given the fact that he's coming off of an injury. So I don't know. This could be fun.
Yeah. It could definitely be fun. Like they definitely need to.
Sorry, it kind of fits the Saquon Barkley side of it all of like linebackers is another undervalued position.
Right. Yeah. I think it makes a ton of sense. I was thinking of a different free agent for Buffalo, but I want to see if you use him because he is one of the highest rated free agents. And it's another one where cap wise, I don't even know if it'd be possible, but Greenlaw would also be a great fit.
Yeah. Kyle, this one again, you could argue, is this a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. But could this be someone who could help out the team at the very least? Probably kind of maybe an obvious fit. What about Sam Darnold to the Steelers? Couldn't this end up being like, what if they sign Sam Darnold to a $30 million a year deal and he ends up just like being like Sam Darnold last year again and the Steelers are able to like win a playoff game?
Yeah, I think I'm going to push back on this one now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is there a possibility of all that? Maybe. But
Hmm.
I think going from a team like Minnesota that has Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and CJ Hawkinson, plus Aaron Jones in the backfield to Pittsburgh is not going to elevate Sam Darnold's level to the point Pittsburgh needs to go to the Super Bowl. I think Pittsburgh has to go draft route. They have to go draft route. This is going to be a long-term thing, trying to figure out this quarterback thing. And yeah, I think that they can't bring in another veteran like this. It's just not working.
Okay, well, let me throw a different one at you then, Kyle.
Okay.
We're making the Saquon thing. Maybe it's not getting a player, but maybe getting a player from the Giants is what you have to do. What about Daniel Jones to the Steelers?
No thanks.
No, okay, no, maybe not, maybe not. Number 7, about Nick Chubb to the Chiefs. Nick Chubb coming off of an injury. The Chiefs like to run the ball now. Give them an elite running back. This one I could actually see.
Yeah, I could see it happening if they get him on the cheap. Like
Mhm.
the funny thing is like Pacheco is viewed as a very good back, and I think he is good. There's really not much difference between him and Kareem Hunt, right? Like Kareem Hunt's
I think Kareem Hunt's better. I think he had a nice season.
yeah, he's a good football player. Like he's still good. I know he was kind of sitting on the sitting in street clothes up until that point, but he's good. So yeah, I think it's a getting a guy like Nick Chubb would obviously make a huge difference. Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
Yeah, they don't need more help. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt could be teammates again, like they were with Cleveland.
Yeah, that would be something that we all don't want to see. What would be another fun Nick Chubb one if it's not Kansas City? What would be another good fit, you think? Could Nick Chubb to give me a second here. This is great podcasting work by me. Could we get Nick Chubb to could that be a Washington one? Get Nick Chubb to Washington?
Interesting. I think they're okay with the backs they have now, but yeah, I don't hate that. Of like let's move forward and make things even better. Yeah, I think. What about the Rams?
I think Kyron's too good.
I think he's okay. I think like again, Nick Chubb at his best was like a top 3, right? Like he was like a Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I think at his best. I don't know if we're getting that version. I mean, I think we're getting a pretty good version of Nick Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a top 3 running back? Like I think Kyron, I would probably pencil in Kyron starting over him next season, right? I mean, I don't know.
At the start, yeah, because of the injury stuff. I don't know. Just throw one out. What about the Chargers? There you go.
That one makes sense. Yeah. I mean, if they're not going to bring back J.K. Dobbins, it's kind of cut from the same cloth there with that one, except Nick Chubb was better.
Yeah. Kyle, you said you don't want to see the Chiefs get Nick Chubb. Here's another one you wouldn't want to see then. What about Hufanga to the Chiefs? Seems like it'd be a perfect fit with how Spagnuolo does this. I mean, this feels like it could work.
That's a really good fit.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate that. You know, I don't want it.
Okay. Does not want that either. Kyle, 2 left. This is one that, again, they have to make the cap work, but maybe the Bengals say, you know what, we need to protect Joe Burrow. Let's get Ronnie Stanley, the great tackle from the Ravens.
Yeah, there's a couple offensive linemen here that I think could go to Cincinnati and fix some things. They've tried different things over the years, and yeah, Stanley, when he plays, he's very good. So yeah, I think it'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Finally, someone I brought up earlier. What about DJ Reed to the Commanders? Can play in a similar scheme to what he's been doing with the Jets. They could use a corner. Not the sexiest pick, but I don't know if it would get that much attention. But you could say like, oh, DJ Reed, the Commanders signed him, and it's worked way better.
Yeah, he's definitely someone that I think could go to several teams and be kind of a sneaky big addition, right? Like I think every team could use another corner, and he is a very good one. You know, like you said, he was probably the best player on the Jets this past season, and so I definitely wouldn't hate that for the Commanders, who could use several defensive players.
Yeah. The issue is this really a Saquon Barkley? Like, is this getting that much attention? Like, if Daniel Jones is great for the Steelers, okay, that's getting attention. People, we're talking about that. I don't know how much we'll talk about DJ Reed to the Commanders, even if he's an All-Pro.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. So, a couple big name free agency left off there. Anything that you feel like could Javon? You know, you mentioned Dre Greenlaw to Buffalo. Could Javon Holland to Buffalo be something that entices you?
Yeah, I don't hate that either. That makes sense. I think he's going to require a little bit more money though, and I think Buffalo's already really strapped for cash, so they would need someone like a Dre Greenlaw who would be like a flyer.
Yeah, I agree with that. What was the other one you mentioned? Khalil Mack. Oh, Khalil Mack to the Bucks. What about Khalil Mack to the Packers?
Yeah. I mean Khalil Mack's one of those guys where I could have picked like 9 teams to go with.
Everybody could use an edge rusher, and everyone could use a corner. That's for sure.
Right.
No Trey Smith one. No Trey Smith swinging in a Super Bowl.
I thought about someone suggested him to the Texans. That works, but it's just like I would say offensive linemen do not get any credit at all. Like picking a left tackle, Ronnie Stanley for the Bengals. That's like a big name tackle to a team that is known for not having offensive line, and even that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah,
just because offensive linemen don't get attention.
Yeah, that is a bit different. So yeah, it's I can't imagine ever saying a right guard's going to swing the Super Bowl. I won't lie.
They're not going to do ESPN segments of what the hell were the Chiefs doing letting their guard go to the Texans. Look at they went so wrong there. I just don't see that happening.
I mean, they might. Could you imagine that offensive line without Trey Smith next season?
Yeah, it could be tough. Again, but they have all that money then to sign Hufanga and Nick Chubb.
Yeah, nobody blocking them.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
But we'll see. Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin. And make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Of course, if you like audio only podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline Podcast. It should be available there. We'll be back Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern to do our picks of who's going to win Super Bowl MVP. Kyle, like I said, never gotten it wrong. Every year in our 20 picks, the Super Bowl MVP has been selected.
Yeah, we did do that. Should we come up with like another segment maybe to do so we're not doing an hour on just 20 MVP candidates?
We could think of something. If you have if anyone has any suggestions, you can comment it.
Yeah, we'll have to brainstorm unless we get something good. So and we'll take your idea. So that's fine, and not give you credit for it, by the way. So no worries.
Yes.
So yeah, I saw Scott Hansen on my TV today. That was fun.
With what? What was he doing?
He showed up for the Champions League decision day. It was match day 8 for soccer of Champions League, which is like the best teams in Europe. And so they had 18 games on at 3:00 Eastern time, all at the same time. And there was like all the results had big ramifications for everybody in the standings. And so they had Scott Hansen on to talk about the red zone show they did for the games. It was pretty interesting.
But why does soccer do that? Because like you can't watch like 3 different games at this. Like football, you can watch several games at the same time, right? Soccer, you kind of have to like choose one or the other.
Yeah. So the tough thing, so they do it for like the leagues and like the Premier League. It's nice because like the decision day is whatever, because like there's only really like 2 or 3 games that actually matter for ramifications. And so the other ones are kind of insignificant. So you just check in on the 2 or 3 games that actually matter. And it's only 10 games, right? Because there's 20 teams in the league. But there's been some really cool moments from it with the Premier League as far as decision day goes, because you'll have something like the Manchester City game when they won their first title way back, where there was just this craziness with the last second goal being scored by Aguero, or like the funny ones is like, so I think it was a few years ago where Liverpool needed like a win and a Manchester City loss to win the title. And then you just hear a bunch of cheering in the stands because everyone at the Liverpool game's on their phone checking the Manchester City score. And so it's like Manchester City gave up a goal and they just start going crazy cheering. And then, it's just like you hear that in the background. It's pretty funny.
Okay, we have lost 15, actually up to 20 concurrent viewers in that section, Kyle.
Wow. You guys are some haters. Unbelievable.
Yes. Well, I think also the show's over. I'm like, okay, they're talking about soccer. I can go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Usually the numbers drop a little bit after I say the show is over. We did our plugs? Or have
we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did our plugs. We're not talking about Ronnie Stanley to the Bengals anymore. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, all that really insightful stuff we were doing earlier. Hey, we're having fun.
Yeah, that is for sure. We're always having fun.
Okay, well, again, we'll be back Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Be on the lookout for that. Of course, a week from Sunday, we will recap the Super Bowl. So we look out for all of that stuff. But yeah, Kyle, ready to get out of here?
Yeah, we can get out of here. Kieran's asking for a hockey chat, but my team is the most boring team on the planet, and I hate them, and I'm not talking about it. So we're going. So yeah, see you later. Yeah, Lightning had a rough patch as well. So we'll get out of here, which I'm sure makes Kieran happy. But yes, thank you to everybody for watching or listening. We do appreciate it. We'll see you on Sunday, and until then,
Have a good one.
Peace.